All right, I'm recording. Good day, everyone. Before I go into this week in teaching, let's just talk about real quick. If you've watched this channel for a little while, you know that my wife is always doing like these like new health things and how she wants me to live long, so she makes me do weird stuff like brush my teeth with the worst toothpaste ever known to man, or drink beet juice that we make in a juicer. It tastes like earth. We got a couple new ones on the list, and I just want to share them because I don't really know who else to share them with. One is drinking this coffee instead of my regular coffee, which is bullet coffee, which is like you take out the sugar, but then you add butter. And what else do we add to it? A little salt, pink Himalayan salt from the oceans of Tibet, and cinnamon. It's not that good. It doesn't make me happy, but it's fuel, so that's why I'm doing it. Yeah, all right, so I get it. I understand. She's saying she adds the salt because she's trying to keep her electrolytes up. I have also been doing, we started doing intermittent fasting, which means that I don't even drink coffee until 8 in the morning, which is when homeroom starts. And man, what's that like to be at school for about 30 to 60 minutes without coffee is... There's gotta be an award. Teacher Appreciation Day this year better kick it into overdrive. Then I don't eat until about 10 or 11. So I usually drink like a smoothie every morning that's like kale and fruit and some other healthy stuff in there. And then I don't drink that until like 10 when I usually drink that at 6. And then I usually eat a salad every day for lunch, but I do that later in the day now. And so it was an adjustment. Like we just picked a real interesting week to start that coming back from spring break. Then my wife's doing like a ketogenic diet, and that's a whole nother thing. And then we started taking these pills, nootropics. They're supposed to be for my brain, but they're like gigantic. They're like, you know, the size of a doll head, 2 of them every day. So experiments all the time. Let's talk about experiments at some point. Do a lot of them. Maybe that's another video. To say there's a lot going on would be an understatement this week. So let me paint this picture for you. I'm not sure how long this video ends up being, but I have a live feed due in about 60 minutes, so gotta hustle it up. Before I get into the week, I want everyone to know I've been asked a number of times about an address that folks, if they wanted to like send something to, or if their class had something to send to me or something like that. And until now, we haven't had a P.O. box, but alas, we have procured a P.O. box. And that P.O. box address, I will put right there, which is probably hard to read because of that window, but I'll make it dark. P.O. Box 11, Gloucester City, New Jersey, 08030. So yeah, there it is. So if you need our address for anything, now you have it, and now let's get on with the week. Teachers know, right? Maybe you're a first year teacher and you just figured this out, but like, when spring break comes, you really need it. And I'm not sure if you would need it as much if it didn't exist, but just knowing that it's coming, it's like, man, you are looking forward to it. I got to leave 4 days early because the boys and I went to Belize, which that video is still being edited, the 8 hours of footage that I have of it. I was in Belize, then I came home, I had another week off, and it was really, really sweet. And I was like looking forward to going back to school. Like I start missing my students, and I love that sense of purpose of getting up in the morning and having somewhere to go and having someone to help and stuff to do. So too much time off for me is no good. But while on break this time, right, even as I'm gearing up to go back and my lesson is fresh and I am feeling good and I'm missing everyone and I just want to like show up and give them hugs and tease them all day. We found out over break that we had lost one of our students. One of our students was shot and killed on Easter. And so going back to break from that was different than I've experienced before. And so this is my own head. So it's my channel, so I'll just work my own stuff out. It's like, be like therapy, where my therapist lives in the comment section. But I don't talk about kind of like a lot of those struggles. Like I teach in Philadelphia, and although it's not, violence isn't a part of my day-to-day life at my school, I do feel, here's what I'm trying to get around. I'm trying to get around this idea of like tragedy being opportunistic. And so I can see in the back of my head, there's this person making a video that talks about things like this, and it is, they're trying to like I don't know, get subs or win people over or something like that. And that's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at here is that this horrific, tragic thing happened, and then what it did is when I came in on Monday, it affected everything. It affected me showing back up and being excited to see my students and hopefully having them be excited to see me. It affected the silliness that I would be able to implement that week and the energy that I came back in starting a new book on Monday and being excited about it, and then kind of, you know, not being able to do that because my students weren't ready for that, and that's not what was appropriate for the moment. And instead I walked in on Monday morning and my room was completely dark. All the lights were off, the shades were drawn, and it was silent. And my homeroom is never silent. It is always loud every day, and which I both loathe and love because I like the boys to have that kind of safe space. But man, when you don't drink coffee until 8 o'clock in the morning, it was a doozy this week. Walking in on Monday was very, very quiet, and so we spent the day just kind of talking about the situation, and that brought up so many emotions, and just seeing the students that I care about so deeply go through something so horrific, knowing that there's nothing I can say and nothing I can do that's going to take that away, and not even knowing if like my sitting there with them through that was like doing it. I know it did for some. I know because they told me that like just sitting there and being quiet with them helps. But it also made me, that moment I felt incredibly grateful for the people that I work with and the ways that I was hearing in which they were dealing with things in their classrooms, like folks that were sharing stories about, you know, the students that we've lost. This is our second boy this year that was lost to gun violence. And so hearing about people that were, like one of my colleagues is like taking the desk in her room, and the students are all writing messages to the student on there, and then they're going to like sort of memorialize that in the classroom where no one will be allowed to sit there, and that seat will remain empty in memory of him. And students that, you know, classrooms that just told stories about the boys that we've lost and about how they knew them, and then teachers that just cried with their students in their class. And so I just think it just made me think also about how important it is for us to kind of mimic the things we need to see in students. If we want kids to be hardworking and be kind, we need to work harder than them and be kinder than them. If we want students to be vulnerable, not afraid to show their emotion or to cry sometimes, especially in the midst of a traumatic event, doing that with them, like letting them see you cry and letting them know that it's okay to feel that way. But I guess just remembering that young people don't already have all the tools. And if they do have the tools, they don't always remember what tools they have in their toolbox, right? They need to be shown what to do and how to do it and what's okay and how to get your anger out and get your sadness out. So whether that looks like helping them memorialize a locker, or helping them to cry, helping them write out what it is that they have going on, or just sitting with them, it's just part of the job. They don't teach you in college, but it's 100% part of the job to help kids learn how to deal with the emotions that are starting to come up in them. So Tuesday was the opposite of Monday. Monday was spent somber and sad, and then Tuesday was like kind of the uptick of that. And I think a lot of that came from the kids kind of still not knowing to do with that sort of energy, and them coming in like more on 11.
The numbers all go to 11.
Battery keeps dying. It's the second time. I took this upswing in momentum and I decided to put it to good use. And we got started on our new book. We're reading Lord of the Flies, which is a weird book to have to read next, but I don't have a lot of like usable time left in the year. So we need to like hit the ground running and get through this book and use it to review everything we've talked about this year. So this is, in a nutshell, not sure where that saying came from. It's kind of a weird thing because we're not in a nutshell. I don't feel particularly nutty. I don't know. But anyway, this is what that looked like in a nutshell. Tuesday we did really quick notes. I do guided notes where I put a PowerPoint up on the wall, and then that PowerPoint shows exactly Like your notes kind of look like fill in the blank. So you only have to implement very important words and you don't put everything in there. So we did short notes on who William Golding is because that's going to influence the way that the book is written. And the kids always ask me like, why do we have to write down when someone was born? Because when someone was born tells you a lot about who that individual is. That if I think about when I started reading Ready Player One and they talked about how the creator of this game that's written about in the book was from the 1980s, I immediately know what kind of movies were hot, what songs were hot, what people dressed like when I think of the 80s. Same thing when I think of the 90s or the early 2000s or the 70s or the 60s. Like knowing about when someone comes from can inform you about who someone is. So early 1900s England is going to paint a very particular picture. And then I showed them a real quick scene from Peaky Blinders to kind of show like at that time, everyone wore a suit. There was like this, a certain level of like respect about what you looked like and how you dressed and how you spoke and having manners, and so what that looked like. After taking notes about him, we took a few notes about British culture because although the book is about a group of boys landing on an island, it's very clearly about a group of English boys that land on an island. And so how that might, even though from a picture, that might look just like a group of kids from Germany or Poland or the United States, it's a different culture. And so talking about that culture and breaking that down for them kind of sets the stage for the book. And then talking a little bit about the experiences that William Golding had gone through before he wrote the book. So the fact that he was in the Royal Navy, the fact that he participated in D-Day, and then showing that opening scene from Saving Private Ryan, to talk about the idea that the experiences that we go through will in a lot of ways shape the sort of individuals that we become in a good way and in a bad way. Then we wrote about in our journals real quick, what are some of the things that you've been through that have shaped the individual that you've become? And then we just talked about why we're reading this book. I think that's important every time you read a book. Talking about the fact that I picked this book on purpose. This is why I picked this book, mostly because I think the students can see themselves in that. I teach at an all-boys school that wears uniforms every single day. So the idea of us being on an airplane and crashing somewhere, something I think I can get them to go along with. And then what would happen if no adults were there? And then even taking a step back and saying, well, what happens when a teacher doesn't show up to class, or when someone's out sick, or when the sub doesn't show up on time? What does your class do in those few moments without an adult? Do they go nuts? Is there the kid that follows the rules? Is there the kid that throws a pencil at someone else first? Camera died again. These first world problems are more than I can deal with. I had to wait like 45 minutes for this thing to charge, and then I did my live feed, and now we're back. And then Marley's back there. Hi, Mar.
Hello.
She is. I love that kid. So I don't remember exactly where we are, but Wednesday was Independent Reading Day, where we read any book that the kids want to read. And I started doing something new with that, where I'm noting what book you're reading and what page you're on, so that the next week I need to see what kind of progress you've made. And could they lie about that? 100%. But I don't think all my students have the wherewithal to do that or the motivation. But I just want to make sure that you're at least not reading a different book each week, that you're reading the same book to its completion. And then that's an experiment, and we'll see where that goes. Thursday, our first thing I want to start sort of reviewing for the final is imagery. We went over imagery earlier in the year, and I have this. So this was with mostly 10th graders, but I have a really great imagery lesson that I do with with a Derek Brown poem called A Finger, Two Dots, and Me, where I didn't do this time, but to just put it out there. I play this poem, which has an enormous amount of imagery in it. You can look it up. I'll have it listed in the show notes below. I play that poem. I have the students lay anywhere they wish in the classroom. They lay down, they close their eyes, and they listen to the poem, and then they have to get up silently and write down what it is that they imagined or what stuck in their head as they were listening to this poem. And so for this, I first ask them to write in their journals a story about an accident that they've been in. Could be a car accident that they were in, or a time when they slipped and fell, or a time during, a football game that they got tackled really hard, a fight that you were in, something traumatic. And what I'm going for there is I then connect two things to that. One, I want them to have a sense of when this airplane crashes on the island for Lord of the Flies, what's going through those kids' heads? What is that sort of punch to the face your airplane just literally fell out of the sky and crashed, what could that feel like? The ringing in your ears, the sense of not really knowing where you are, what's going on. I'm not so much trying to like dig for something horrible that happened in their lives, but just to help them connect to the text a little bit. The next thing I ask is to tell a story about a friend or someone in your family that tells really bad stories, right? The guy that's like, last Saturday night, we were all out for a drink, and it was Sunday night, we were out for a drink. It was me, Timmy, and it was me and Kyle. All right, so Friday night, it's like those dudes that like can't tell a fluid beginning to end story with an appropriate amount of details or that person that that uses zero details in their storytelling, and it really makes their story not as exciting. So those two things I want going through their head. The next thing I do is I shoot a definition of the word imagery up on the board. We talk about what imagery is. I have them watch one of two clips, either the plane crash scene from the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks or episode 1 of Lost when Jack is laying in the jungle and the plane crash happened. And what we're trying to do there, we're going to watch this sort of imagery, and then we're going to write down what we saw, but I also want them to get a sense of like what a plane crash might actually look like. Since the beginning of the book, the plane already crashed. You want to get a sense of like, why are boys all over different areas? Why do some kids, like, are they missing a piece of clothing? Why would kids just come walking out of the woods or out of the jungle just kind of looking around and kind of bewildered? Because they've been through this. So we're kind of gearing up for that. The last thing we do on Thursday is everyone puts their head down. I look up on YouTube jungle noises, and there's, all these videos that have jungle noises on them. While that's playing in the background, I ask everyone to put their head down and read this brief passage that talks about like you've just crash landed in a jungle. Your leg is bleeding, or this is how hot it feels. This is what your t-shirt feels like sticking to the back of your body. This is how bright the sun is. And it's creating this imagery and really kind of driving home this point of like what imagery, what it does when we read it, and how, these little blops of ink can make us feel and think and smell and taste things that the author or the writer is describing. And then to end the class, I just ask, what would you do first? Like, what's the most important thing to do if you're trying to survive in a situation like that? And do you think that the fact that there's no parents there is a good thing or a bad thing? And then we talk about that a little bit as well. And then Friday, end of the week, we finally start reading. And this time we're reading this as a play. And I know I do this a lot, but I really like plays, especially when reading in class, because it gives a number of different kids the ability to read at once. And so we get to do this thing as a whole group, but there's 6 or 7 students reading at a time. It makes everyone pay attention. Someone also gets put in charge of direction, so they're reading all the little director's notes. Someone's put in charge of sound effects. There's all this stuff kind of going on. I think next week we're going to start reading in a circle, so the kids that are actually reading parts will be in the center of the room, and they'll be able to look at one another. And what we're trying to do there is build this sense of like, these are the guys that are in it for the moment, and then when you step out, there's someone else will come into your place. Because sometimes I'll have, if Ralph is a particularly long part in this book, I'll have 2 different people read for him in one period. And then we did Weird Friday, which was about graffiti this week. So it started off as a really tumultuous week, but and I didn't try to like force the lesson. It was weird to do a lesson. It's weird to do this particular book when I know what it's about after things that have happened in school this week. But we did we have to get through material, and it's a hard thing to do that when like life can be so tricky, yet you still have things that you have to do. So it wasn't forced. I still gave space to guys that needed to talk and that would come into my room because their emotions are just all over the place. And so trying to help them figure that out while trying to get work done at the same time, it made going to hot yoga at the end of the week even that much better. And one of the things is, so let me leave you with this. One of the things that I'm learning throughout this year, and I've heard this on a number of different podcasts and in different books this year, is this idea of intentionally creating stressful moments in your life so that when the actual unpredictable, stressful moments come up, you're ready for them. And so I think just the other day I heard Joe Rogan talking to someone about this on his podcast. He was saying that that's why he works out and that's why he does jujitsu and runs up hills and all this other crazy stuff that Joe Rogan does, because he wants to sort of inoculate himself a little bit to the stress. And so when the stress happens, you're sort of ready for it. I know for me, that's going to the gym is how I sort of like can help to inoculate myself against those things. But also it's a total stress relief too. Like going on a Fridays are packed at yoga and being in there and working hard and you're sweating it all out. It's like, it's a really great way to go into the weekend, because we all know that like you could have a great week and that wrong kid says the wrong thing in the last 5 minutes on a Friday and it totally jacks up your whole weekend because you keep thinking about it and dreaming about it and rethinking about it. To have having a way to kind of like really deal with that in a head-on way where you're not running from it and you're not afraid from it and you're just like right in its face, that I've found to be extremely important to me in teaching. And so another way I do that is I love gardening. I have loved gardening since the 6th grade, and I'm not afraid to admit it. Saturday, the weather finally broke in Philly, and it was like 85 degrees. So we put our glaringly pale, pasty white bodies in some shorts and t-shirts, and we spent the whole day outside, like working on our garden and working on the lawn and fixing Marley's little fairy garden we have in the backyard. And right, Mar?
What?
You're supposed to say yes.
Yes!
That's what I'm talking about. It was a good day to just kind of like be with the family. I was feeling extra grateful this week and cherishing my children and my time and the sun. It was a really good way to end the week. And then Sunday's kind of been a lazy day, which I don't do so well at because I'm not real good at being lazy because I get bored. Like we went hunting for stick bots because the new stick bot dinosaurs came out, and made breakfast together and all that stuff. So it was really like beautiful, calm, peaceful weekend, and it was awesome. So look, last thing I'm gonna leave you with, if you're watching this long, then you're gonna wanna know this maybe. If you live in the Philadelphia area, I am doing a meetup on May 4th at Dock Street Pub, which is in Philadelphia. It's in West Philly. It is a totally safe area. Don't let Will Smith steer you otherwise. There's plenty of parking. You don't have to drink to go there. It's a restaurant, so like I'm intentionally not having it at like a bar. But if you do drink and you want to like grab a beer, you can do that as well. It is open to anyone. I will be there with the not so secret wife and a friend of mine, just in case no one shows up and then I just don't want to drink by myself or just hang out by myself. But if you want to go, here's my encouragement to you. I would love to meet you. I am alone in my house. It looks clean right now, right? But let me share this little situation with you. When you're on YouTube, you have to look the part. Like I put on a clean shirt, but doesn't mean I had a shower today. I am wearing a flannel shirt with sweatpants right now because I was gonna go to the gym and then I ended up doing other stuff. My house looks clean, but then if you quickly look behind me, there are stick bot containers and journals and a bow and arrow and a box of goldfish and some other crap. And I cleaned off my dining room table by putting everything on the bench behind the dining room table because my kids were making stuff out of clay and then baking it in the oven today. So although it looks clean, it is not. I am also doing this all by myself all the time. I would really love to meet some of you, and anytime I've gotten the chance to do that, it has really been a highlight of this whole YouTube adventure. So on May 4th, we're gonna do a meetup at Dock Street Pub in West Philly after school. It will be awesome. Please show up, and I will make sure that you don't regret it. I don't really know how I'm gonna do that. I'll give you some stickers. That's it, guys. I hope you have the greatest week ever. Peace.